Hi friends, in this video I'm going to talk about the importance of conducting a needs analysis. Whenever we design a course, as course designers, teachers have the important responsibility to conduct needs analysis of their participants. The teacher has multiple roles. One of the roles that we always talk about is that of a course developer or a course designer, because teacher is also an activity organizer, a learning facilitator, a learning strategist, and most importantly, teacher is also a kind of a learning counselor all the time. I strongly believe whenever learners face difficulties when learning something, or they have some sort of a learning challenges, or even if they face some kind of stress in the process of learning something, the teacher as a learning facilitator or learning counselor has to come up with some innovative solutions. So teacher is also a kind of a solution provider. I would even call the teacher as a learning strategist. So learners depend on teachers on several occasions to make sure that their learning takes place smooth, or learning happens smooth. So for that we have a great responsibility as course designers and developers of conducting needs analysis. What should we keep in mind when we conduct needs analysis? Generally, there is something called grouping of the learners. Like we have specific batches, especially when it comes to English for specific purposes. And we'll have to keep in mind, or even in the learner's attitude towards a particular objective, the learning objective. The learning objective is, say for example, making learners understand difficult conversations. If you're going to design a program to make them understand difficult conversations, mastering the difficult conversations, which I've offered in several corporates, for example, especially for those mid-level managers, or sometimes even the new recruits in corporates, request me to conduct this mastering the difficult conversations. Prior to it, I would try to understand their level of understanding. So I'll have to assess their learning ability, especially when it comes to their listening competency. How good are they in listening to native varieties of English and non-native varieties of English? And do they have mother tongue influence? And because I always believe listening goes hands in hand with the speaking. So when you are trying to teach people listening, you should understand they pick up the repertoire of the language, the style of expression, and the intonation patterns. Sometimes they even get to know informally or even formally the structure of a conversation, how to begin a conversation or how to end a conversation, etc. So this will in a way help them to become good speakers. So listening module in this particular course is very important. So the teacher has to test, first of all, what kind of listening competency do these learners have. What else can the teacher do? The teacher has to understand the learning interest, or I would even call the learner interest and learning interest. I would distinguish these two, in a big way, because I believe when the learners are trying to learn something, in the process of learning, they get motivated to explore it further. So there should be always what you call extensive learning feasible after every session of training. So that is extremely important. But unfortunately, we do not have that kind of atmosphere prevalent in any of our training academies or training programs, or even for that matter, even in the case of English for academic purposes. There is no needs analysis scientifically done to design a course. It seems to be just copying of the previous courses, or the course instructions, objectives, and the modules or rubrics, etc. So that is not acceptable. We have to really train our teachers to understand the importance of conducting a needs analysis. Unless we understand the needs of the learner, the personality of the learner's motivation to learn something, how are we going to really design a course? The course has to be culture specific. It depends on the target group, which they're going to interact with. If they're going to interact with the Americans, for example, I remember training a group of employees who have to negotiate almost on a day-to-day basis with the American multinational companies. And I'll have to train them on mastering difficult conversations in the American context. So there should be culture-specific inputs given in that course design. And there must be other international scenarios kept in mind as well. Otherwise, it's going to be very difficult for the learners to master it. So I strongly believe needs analysis has to keep in mind learning strategies the learners, the possible learning difficulties that they might face. They could also list out, the learning objective for each module, and there should be a task-specific learning objective in association with the learner's learning time. Very important, because the learner learning time varies, from place to place, or rather from group to group. I've seen it. For example, highly competent learners might learn things faster, whereas average learners, or those who are first generation learners, sometimes they might find it difficult to master it. So we'll have to identify what are the possible learning solutions or learning aids that we can provide them. How do we counsel them? It is mandatory that we provide them one-on-one support, especially after the class hours, to pick up whatever they have, understood. Or if there is a possibility to help them to identify right learning strategies through tutorial support, that would be the best thing to do. Unless we do this, I think it's going to be very difficult for learners to master the difficult conversation. So I say needs analysis has 2 or 3 major goals. One of the goals is to understand learners' need, to get to know learners' potential, to assess the learner's capacity of learning, learner's interest, and the previous history of learning, and learner's strategies, or the kind of learner strategies that they have already employed, or learner's orientation towards the course, and learner expectations, and learner motivation, learner personality, and learning goals. All these could be taken into account before we design a course. I hope you have come to know certain aspects of using needs analysis, what we have to keep in mind when we conduct a needs analysis. I will always say there must be a testing, which is called a diagnostic testing, which is part of the needs analysis. Unless you map the learning skills, the learner resources, learning strategies, learner difficulties, the possible learner doubts, how are we going to provide solutions in the course? So I would suggest you to keep in mind all these while you conduct a needs analysis. So whenever you design any course or develop a course, it is mandatory for you to come up with a needs analysis. I'm sure this video has helped you. If in case you need a lot of support in this regard, you're free to talk to me. You can visit me at www.mangalaprataban.com. That is MangalaPrataban.com. You can also visit me at thinksmarttoday.com. That is www.thinksmarttoday.com. I hope I've addressed the best. If you need more, inputs in this regard, you can also visit my, working sphere. You can come directly, consult me, talk to me, and get to know more inputs. And if you want to strategize in terms of conducting a needs analysis, or you would like to come up with a list of topics that you have to do a needs analysis, you're free to approach me, and that to support you in every way. I wish you all success as a course designer. Hope your courses are going to be highly helpful for learners to achieve the best. Thank you very much. Good luck to you for the time.